Some of you know that actually a number of decades ago now, I met a very special lady, Holocaust survivor Anita Dittman, wrote her book. More recently, thanks to WorldNet Daily Films, writer, director, producer George Escobar actually made it into a documentary about 2 years ago, and it's soon going to be going into the big screen, into your local theater, hopefully year and a half. We're going to let George talk about that. And I also have the privilege of having in studio George Escobar. I also have the young woman who's going to be playing Anita Dittman in that film, and I have Anita in studio as well. We're just going to have a real short update here. George Escobar, welcome back to Understanding the Times Radio.
Wonderful to be back here.
Well,
with you,
it's so good to have you. Give us just a little bit of an update. I mean, you are a seasoned filmmaker. A lot of people saw Alone Yet Not Alone. You have a new film coming out this summer we can mention later. But give us an update. Where do you think we are with Trapped in Hitler's Hell? That's the name of the book. That's the name of the documentary you made some 2 years ago, and now something even bigger is coming along. Give us an update.
Well, movies take a long time
Yes.
to make, and last year was dedicated towards the screenplay and beginning to raise the money, and also writing up the business plan so that we can raise more money. And the Lord was providential again this year, and He's beginning to assemble the team that can help this. Both investors, we're seeking more, but we're getting some really good traction on that. And most importantly, and the reason we're here together is because the Lord has brought a wonderful young actress who I think personifies the heart of young Anita. She is a very talented young lady who just impressed me when I met her at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention.
Now, you really want to skirt Hollywood, correct?
Yeah, Hollywood has been very receptive to a lot of movies
They have. That's
made by
true.
Christians
That's
and,
right.
and people, what they call faith-based movies. And, Trapped in Hitler's Hell obviously has at its center, at its core, the fact that Anita was able to endure and survive because of God's miracles in her life and step by step making Himself strong in her life. This is something that Hollywood has not made in a long, long time. The last movie similar to this is probably Chariots of Fire. So this is an opportunity for Christians to rally around this project, but also for Hollywood to pay attention that this movie is something that needs to be told, and it will be told according to God's will and timing.
Now, you mentioned investors. So obviously a project like this costs millions. I'm sure it's up for near 10 million. At least that's the figure I heard at one time. And you are looking at investors. I mean, if someone listening to this is really inspired, what's their plan of action?
Well, they would contact me, and they can contact me through you, Jan. That would
Sure.
be one of the best ways. And hopefully we can get all the financing in by this spring or summer, and then we can go into production, pre-production immediately, and be filming by next spring. And the movie out by fall of 2017 is really what we're praying for. And what a good friend of mine has always said, what the Lord ordains, He will provide. He will make the provisions.
Okay, folks, so you can write me, Jan at olivetreeviews.org. You can call the office here if you want more information. I want to introduce a young woman who is likely going to play the role of Anita in this film. Her name is Rose Reed. And in talking to her, and she's 17 years old, which is the age Anita was during most of the story, at least the Holocaust part of the concentration camp and the escape, and Anita was 16, 17 years old. And as I was talking to Rose here earlier in the day, she was telling me about how, quite frankly, appalled that she is at the lack of knowledge of the Holocaust. Rose, on the part of just young people, is that who you're referring to, or in general?
Really, it's just the younger generation that has completely forgotten the tragedy of the Holocaust, and it's disheartening because I know that those are the people that are going to grow up and are going to be the next world leaders, and they don't realize what happened.
You have spent a couple of hours today with Anita, and you said to me that you're touched by the fact that as she relates some of the story, there's no bitterness. There's only gratefulness to God that there were so many miracles that took place, survival being one of them. What is this going to do to you as an actress as you possibly play this role? Is this going to grow your faith? How is this going to change your life?
You know, it changes so much more than just, how am I going to portray Anita? Because I knew just from reading Anita's story in the book you both put together that she experienced so many miracles. And I sort of knew that going in, but it was another thing to hear her joy when she spoke spoke of the tragedy that could have turned her so bitter. And it makes me look at my life and think there are so many miracles that I don't realize and I don't recognize as miracles. And it's incredible to see the kind of faith that Anita has. And it's not blind faith because she knows he's there and she's seen his presence and she's felt his presence. It's just an incredible faith.
Anita, your thoughts. We talked about this possibly happening a number of decades ago. We don't even have to say how long ago, but it was a long time ago. I was just starting out in my writing career, and we talked about possibly this could someday be a film. It obviously is. It's a wonderful documentary that George Escobar has produced. But now you're seeing some things start to come together. How does that make you feel?
Just amazed.
Amazed?
Yeah.
Well, it's the next step in reaching people with the truth and with the gospel and with the gospel of salvation.
Because that's what I'm aiming when I'm speaking. And God has given me the ability to do it, and I can see it. But this is probably more alive because I read Corrie ten Boom's book.
Yes.
And it was okay. But when I saw it portrayed in a film, I think I cried through the entire movie because it was so awesome.
Well, you want emphasized what a great God we have.
Yes, and that's when I speak, is to give God the glory. And also let people know not to be discouraged when trouble strikes sometimes, and that especially with my leg. I said, when my friend was so appalled to see this and everything, but I said, yeah, I have ugly wounds, but I have my leg. And that I had even the opportunity to witness to the nurse, and how God sometimes permits certain struggles in our life only to keep us from something worse. Like in my case, rape would have been a lot worse. And also it brings home that God has a plan for our life, and that starts long before we're born sometimes. Some of the girls, after she came from watching the documentary, a young girl came, she said, I heard you speak at our church. You're awesome. I said, no, honey, God is awesome. He really is.
Rose, have you been in other productions? Is this your first? Give us a little background to your experience in films. I mean, 17, you're not exactly seasoned actress yet.
Right, no, of course. I am fairly new to the world of acting, but I have spent every second I can doing some sort of acting, whether it's going to all sorts of different productions and being even just an extra on set, doing supporting characters, and have been auditioning for lead roles for the past year now, but have been mostly focused on a film that we are shooting in the summertime until George came along with Trapped in Hitler's Hell and gave me the opportunity to audition, and I was able to put all of those hours and hours of private lessons to work.
What did you think, George?
What impressed me most about Rose in meeting her and talking with her and then her sending me the audition, I knew that I needed to find a young actress, but I needed somebody that had the maturity that I know that Anita had going through the Holocaust. You know, she may have been 17, but she had to be a lot more mature, and it's rare to find that in young people. So I needed to find somebody who had the maturity that Anita would have exhibited at that age, at 17, going through the Holocaust. And so many young people nowadays have a sense of just the immediacy of their lives.
That's right.
And they don't really see maybe the past, and certainly very few see the future. And I got the sense that Rose already had that maturity and that perspective. And if you notice, she didn't say the word like in anything that she said so far, which told me, okay, this is a person that actually has articulation that's beyond her peers.
George, where do you see this going? Now, I know you and I are so like-minded. You want to see lives changed. I know. You're a filmmaker, and we carry Alone Yet Not Alone. We've sold it forever. Whenever it first came out, we started carrying it because it's a wonderful faith-based film, and you've got a new one coming out called The Screenwriters. But what do you hope for Trapped in Hitler's Hell? What is your heart hope for this film?
As you've already alluded to, this movie has been years and decades in the making.
That's right.
God's timing is really what's moving us forward forward. It seems to be moving more quickly now because all the elements are falling into place that need to happen at the particular time. So he's already preparing an audience for this movie for such a time as that we're undergoing through now. So my hope is that every single person that's going to come to this production have a heart for God's truth and for what God wants to tell us today. You know, he lives across all time. So he spoke to Anita back, you know, in World War II, and God is speaking to us now, and he's preparing a future audience for this. So what I want people to come away with is that this is not a historical movie. God is timeless. This is a movie for now and always, because he is a God of eternity, and the truths that come into play in this movie are ones that we need to hang on to, because we don't know how difficult the times are to come. And I think he is preparing us. And this is one of those movies that I think he's going to be using as a tool. So I would encourage your readers, your audience on radio, anybody that hears about this message to really seek God and how they can participate.
The new medium today is all visual. We've got the popularity of YouTube. Obviously, the film industry is huge. Why is that?
People have a sense that they are living through vicariously when they watch a movie. Mm-hmm. And that has an impact because of the visual, they hear it, the music. It's very emotional involvement. And so a movie like Trapped in Hitler's Hell can go deep into people's hearts. And I think that's the reason that needs to be made now, even more so than ever, is because we need that for a time like this. You know, if I asked you, or most people in the audience, you know, what did the pastor at church preach on last week? You'd have a hard time remembering.
Well, apologies to pastors, but you're right.
Yeah, it's not the pastor's fault.
Not the pastor's fault.
But when they ask somebody, you know, tell me about your favorite movie, well, they may have seen it 30 years ago, and they can tell you all the details. And that's the power. And, you know, God invented all these things, so we just need to use it properly.
I think the other thing that is on my mind is that anti-Semitism is just on the rise again. There's really another spirit of the Holocaust going on. We've got, this time certainly it's Islamo-Nazis who are out to destroy the Jews, but the Jews of Europe are rapidly fleeing to Israel because the climate over there has turned so awful. I have a suspicion that there are going to be some U.S. Jews, at least those who care about Israel, that are going to be going there eventually too, because of this rise of global anti-Semitism.
Attacks in the street, the firebombing of synagogues in France and Germany, marchers chanting death to Jews. Cases of violent anti-Semitism are spreading across continental Europe, alongside more rational criticism of Israel for its attacks on Gaza. There has so far been no such violence in Britain, but July saw the second highest reported number of anti-Semitic incidents in this country in 30 years, mostly related to trolling on social media. A warning, some people may find the content of this report by our Home Affairs correspondent Simon Israel unsettling.
Images of the past have fronted a resurgent mood of anti-Semitism across Europe. The Gaza conflict is an additional accelerant. Synagogues have been attacked, community centres have been bombed, and the language has turned from anti-Israel to anti-Jew. In recent protests in Germany, there have been chants of "Jew pig, come out and fight." At a legitimate anti-Israel demonstration in Holland, some protesters called for death to the Jews. In France, there are demonstrations for Jews to leave the country. Posters have gone up in Paris, inviting people to bring hammers and fire extinguishers. 8 synagogues have been attacked within a week. The Gaza factor has had its impact in the UK as well, although not so severe. According to the organisation responsible for security for Jewish communities here, July recorded the second highest number of anti-Semitic incidents in 30 years.
But why is what you see in a demonstration, why does that affect the way you feel about how safe you are?
Because there's placards saying death to the Jews and Hitler was right, and things which I don't see what that has got to do with Israel's policy in Gaza. And that's scary as a Jew living in the 21st century in modern Britain to be encountering that kind of blatant, flagrant anti-Semitism, quite frankly.
Well, of course people are less safe because there are people out to get you. This is not Jewish paranoia. This is people who are actually out to get you.
Rose, what's your thought on that?
It's really shocking to me that some people don't realize that it's going on. We're so preoccupied with small other nothing issues that everyone seems to be so concerned about that we don't realize that history is about to repeat itself, and the younger generation that isn't paying attention, it's going to slip us by and we're not going to realize it.
It's all generations not paying attention. The younger ones definitely aren't. They're caught up in their Facebook and their iPhones, etc. Very few of any generation are paying attention to this historical fact. And George, I'm sure you're aware of that too, that, I mean, this rise in anti-Semitism is just shocking. The Bible actually predicted it, but that doesn't make it any easier.
Sometimes it's lack of information, it's lack of not reading the scriptures, because the Bible foretells a lot of these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But we're so preoccupied with wealth and status, and I do a lot of speaking in churches, not so much in secular schools anymore, but Christian schools. I'll be speaking in a Christian school on Friday, but I had this awesome experience where I spoke at a secular school, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. The kids, they were 8th graders, 300 of them, and you could have dropped a pin. And I talked to some people who were sitting in the audience with them, and they said they were just spellbound.